Mailbag time here on the Broncos Breakdown. Now, before we look at any questions, today's show was filmed during our live show, which airs every single Tuesday, 3 o'clock Mountain Time, 4 o'clock Central, 5 p.m. Eastern. So be sure to tune in for a future live show if you have a question you want answered. Now, our first question comes in via Super Chat from Ronald Putnam. Hi, Matthew. Hello, Ronald. To make the cap work, do you think Broncos would trade a wide receiver for Jacobs, since in the same AFC West? I think what Ron was kind of talking about, if you trade for Josh Jacobs, you'll be giving him a contract extension, which will probably be an average of like $12 to $15 million a season, somewhere in that range. And if you're giving out that big contract, you have to move on from a big contract, kind of like NBA-wise, to match salaries. That's not a requirement. You can always put void years on, big signing bonus to lower the cap hit. So you don't have to move on from, like, say, Courtland, Sutton to balance the books out. You could have both if you wanted to have both. But ultimately, I just don't think it's going to happen, mostly because you don't see running backs get traded between one interdivision team to another. It's not impossible. Happened last year with the Lions and the Vikings. But I just don't think Denver is in a spot where they want to trade for Josh Jacobs. I know Sean Payton raved about him, but he raved about him in free agency. I don't know if he raved about him in a sense of give up draft picks and give him the contract. To me, that probably seems a bit too rich for Denver. Ronald, thank you so much for the super chat. Slap yourself. I don't know if you already answered this, but do you think the pressure is on Payton and the Broncos to have a winning season after the Nuggets won their title? I think there's something in the air, right? Something in the mile-high air of the Avs won last year, the Nuggets won this year. Who's next, right? Looking at you, Broncos, because it's not going to be the Rockies, and I have no idea if the Rapids are any good or not. So there is probably a sense of, hey, this is becoming a city of champions, and we're not going to settle for another losing season. And if so, we'll take our attention over to the Avs and the Nuggets, right? We'll go over to Ball Arena. It's still the NFL. NFL is always king. There are certainly maybe some pressure in the air in April and May, June, whatever. June specifically when the championship is won. But by the time September rolls around, that's kind of behind you. And I don't think that's going to be lurking over Sean Payton's shoulder when he's game planning for week one. Moses with the super chat. Thank you so much. If Russ isn't top 10, do we trade up to get Caleb Williams? This is a tough question to answer because I don't know where Denver's picking, right? If I knew that, then I could have a good idea of what a package could look like. If you want a blueprint, look at what it cost Carolina to get from 9 to 1. If that was Denver, let's say Denver picks 9. The equivalency would be Jeudy gets traded, and DJ Moore is better than Jeudy at this point. So it'd probably have to be Jeudy and, like, another player, say Caden Stearns, okay? And then 2 firsts and a second and like a fourth or something. Like, that's a big haul for Caleb Williams, who won't have a ton around him. So if Russ isn't top 10, do they trade up to get Caleb Williams? If this team is not picking top 10, I don't see a way they can move up to get to the number 1 spot. And I think that's where Caleb Williams goes. And I just don't see Sean Payton really, really bottoming out this first year and being a bottom 10 team in the NFL and picking top 10. So to me, I don't think the stars really align for Denver to move up and get Caleb Williams. Plus, if you're George Payton, like, you are signing your death certificate as a GM if you flame out on Russell Wilson and then you trade more future first to get Caleb Williams. And if he doesn't work out immediately, you're out of a job. Prison Mike, thoughts on bringing back Dalton Risner, the Dementors. Dalton Risner. Not like terribly opposed to this idea. When you look at Denver's offensive line here, they wouldn't, like, they're not signing him to play left guard. That's Ben Powers now. But what if you signed Dalton Risner because you didn't expect him to be a free agent in June, and his price tag is dropped, and you could move Lloyd Cushenberry out of the lineup, put Quinn Miners over at center, and add Dalton Risner at right guard? Bowles, Powers, Miners, Risner, McGlinchey. That is a completely turned around offensive line. You added 2 new faces. You get Bowles back, and hopefully Miners and Risner can stay healthy. That is a very good offensive line. So if Dalton Risner wants to come back and Denver's willing to pay what he's looking for and it's not too much, I wouldn't be upset about the idea of Miners moving over and Risner going to right guard. So what do you guys think? Should the Broncos re-sign Dalton Risner and kind of gerrymander this offensive line a little bit, shuffle the deck up? I mean, if the money works, fine by me. Now, if Dalton Risner can find more money elsewhere and Denver doesn't want to match that, I've got no issue with moving forward with this current offensive line. But come on, I'd be lying to you if I said that having Cushenberry in the lineup over Risner is a better move for that team. Garrett Ringy, what's going on? Could we trade Jeudy or Sutton plus a second rounder for Hopkins or Diggs? What would be the salary cap? Well, Hopkins is a free agent, so I got some good news for you right there. You don't have to trade for DeAndre Hopkins. You don't have to sign DeAndre Hopkins. As for trading Jeudy or Sutton plus a second for Diggs, I talked about that on a show last week as kind of a really wild out there idea. I just don't think it's going to happen because I don't see why Buffalo would want to do it. And as for Denver, maybe Sean Payton thinks that with Stefon Diggs coming over, they can really turn around this season and hit a 180 mark immediately, which he did in New Orleans, by the way. They were a 3-win team before he got there, and his first season, he had them in the NFC Championship game. Now, a certain guy named Drew Brees also came over, so that kind of helped a little bit too. But the salary cap, it's too tough to explain right now without seeing the numbers in front of me, but financially, it could be done theoretically. The cap's always a bit of a myth. It's not going to happen, though, Garrett. I hate to ruin your day if you were, hoping this would happen, but I would not hold your breath. Julian signed Kareem Hunt. There's just been no chatter around Kareem Hunt this entire offseason. I don't know if the NFL has just kind of moved on from Kareem Hunt or if a lot of these running backs, Dalvin Cook, Zeke, Kareem Hunt, are just going, hey, why not sit and wait till nothing's happening from now until training camp. So what's the point of signing tomorrow if I could hold out, wait a little longer, and maybe get more money when training camp rolls around when a Cam Akers type injury pops up and then my value just went up. For them, it was either sign back in March when all the money was still out there. Now you've kind of gotten past that point. You might as well see it through, wait till August. So if August rolls around and Javonte Williams has not shown that he's going to be ready to start the year or at least play in the first couple of weeks, I could see them exploring running backs. But for now, I'm guessing they're going to wait till August to see how Javonte Williams looks. Now, speaking of training camp, it is right around the corner. And don't miss a thing. I know training camp can be in the weeds at times, but we break it down for you. We condense it for you in a very appetizing way, if you will. So subscribe down below and get the best Broncos training camp coverage out there. Ernesto Siebert. Are the Broncos looking for another kicker? They did have Randy Bullock, during minicamp in. Now, they didn't sign him afterwards. I wouldn't be shocked if Denver waits until training camp to get started, make a couple of cuts, because remember, there's no mandatory roster deadlines anymore. Previous years, it was like on August 10th, you had to get down from 90 to 85, and then the next week from 85 down to 80. This year, it's 90 man to start and then 53 on roster cutdown day. So if they want to make some fluid cuts as the preseason rolls along, and if Elliott Fry has one miss in one preseason game, there will be 3 kickers at the next practice. That much I'm sure about. Denver Dan. Every year a team goes from worst to first in their division. You think Sean Payton can do that in Denver? I definitely think Sean Payton is capable of doing that. Now, you have a certain juggernaut in Kansas City that's going to be hard to dethrone, but at some point, they will lose the AFC West. They're just not going to win it every year for the rest of eternity. Even if Patrick Mahomes is there for the next 10 years, I have to believe he will not win the AFC West every single year of his career. Now, we can look at the candidates to go from worst to first. These are all 8 teams that finished at the bottom of their respective divisions in 2022. The Browns are looking to have a bounce back year. They could be a candidate to do so. Houston, no. The Jets, I just don't believe in Aaron Rodgers, honestly. Denver's right there we talked about. Chicago is interesting. Worse than the NFL potentially. But with Rodgers out of the division, they could shoot up. Atlanta won 7 games last year, and that was good to be 4th. So with Tom Brady out of Tampa Bay, I think they're a really good candidate for this. Washington, I'm going to pass on. Arizona, I'm going to pass on. If I had to pick one of these 8 teams, put my money down, man, I'm looking at Atlanta right now, and I'm looking at the rest of the NFC South, and it is garbage. Like, Derek Carr is the best thing there. So if that's how high the bar is, maybe Atlanta could squeak by. I just think for now, I can't pick Kansas City not to win the division until I see it to believe it. So with that being said, if you disagree with me, by all means, take it to the comment section. Who do you think will go from worst to first? Of those 8 teams that all finished in the sellers of their division last year, who's going to be at the top? It happens every year. If you don't believe me, go back in time, look at some previous years. There's always a team that goes from worst to first. It'll be one of those 8 teams. If I had to pick one, Atlanta's looking pretty good right now. Tyrone Larry, will the Broncos get more than 10 wins this year? They won 5 games last year. They had 9 one-score losses. If Sean Payton is the coach of last year, very different season. But of those 9 one-score losses, let's say the Sean Payton difference is he wins 5 of those 9. So all of a sudden you go from 5-12 to 10-7. I think Denver's probably going to be 9-8. That's been my record prediction. So will they get more than 10? I don't think so. I think 10 is probably the ceiling. Like, more than 10 means 11. So I think that's probably a bit too rich for them in year 1. But it's Sean Payton. He got off to a very good start in New Orleans. You can't quite rule it out definitively. Eddie Martinez, last question. Which would be a better pickup, Ezekiel Elliott or Dalvin Cook? Good question. I would probably go with Ezekiel Elliott. Dalvin Cook had better numbers last year, but what does Zeke do better than Dalvin Cook? Pass protection and probably goal line. They're both really good near the end zone. Dalvin Cook has scored a bunch of touchdowns, but I think if you wanted to protect Russell Wilson, Zeke would do a much better job than Javonte Williams would in pass protection. And when it comes to the goal line, Williams has never been an awesome goal line back. Fortunately, he had a fumble against Seattle last year, so I'd probably lean towards Zeke. Although what you did miss from Denver's running back room last year was big play potential, right? Denver never had big, long rushes. The longest play I can really think of last year was Marlon Mack against the Chiefs on that screen. And that's kind of sad that that's the longest you can think of. But Dalvin Cook definitely brings some big play potential more than Zeke does. But I like Zeke for the short line situation to move the chains more and to protect Russell Wilson. So I'll go with Ezekiel Elliott. That's it for today's mailbag. If you have not subscribed, consider going ahead and doing so. We keep you guys in the loop all year long. Best Broncos YouTube coverage out there. Plus, it's completely free.